Hey, if you're a fan of the band STYX, or if you just like collecting vinyl, I think you'll find this video pretty interesting. So what I have in front of me is STYX's 9th studio album, and it's called Cornerstone. This came out in October of 1979. And this was a pretty big deal. I mean, it went multi-platinum, and it was they'd had a string of pretty successful things. A couple years before this, they had put out The Grand Illusion, which did incredibly well, and then Pieces of Eight, which is another one. I think we did a video on that one before that did extremely well, and then this one. But this one, you could feel a little bit of the rift starting inside the band, and it would only be a couple albums later that the band would be over after this. Because this is the one that had the song Babe. If you remember that was like their biggest song to date at this point. I mean, it was a huge, huge hit. And it was, I mean, some people kind of think, you know, you can argue about this all day. What was the first power ballad? And some people say, hey, it was Babe by STYX, you know, on the album Cornerstone. And it was a really big deal. It was a huge seller. But this album, it added that, it kind of turned into this little bit of a more soft rock feel, and you could feel Dennis DeYoung kind of pulling in that direction, where you had Tommy Shaw and James Young trying to keep the hard rock roots in there. But it ended up being kind of a cool album. But I really, really loved how they put this together. And what I'm going to show you is something kind of interesting, because I'm going to show you how they packaged this album, and then I'm going to show you the Japanese import of this album and what the differences are. And I think you'll find this kind of interesting. So on the cover here, you see this, you know, looks like this could be out of Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, where they've dug up this thing. You got a person with a flashlight, and you see this image right here on this little, well, cornerstone, I'm assuming, but it's this little stone there. And then you'll see that once we start opening this record up, another reference to that. When you flip the album over, you'll actually see that same image right here in this, whatever this room is. And then it does something interesting where it opens up a little differently than a lot of other records, where it opens up like this. And then there's this little kind of slot that it sits inside of. Then you take this out. This is what the record is in, obviously. And when you take it out, you'll see that they have all the band members right here. And then they have these images. Now, this is the image right here that you see on the front of the album. That's here, I'll just pull it back out. You'll see that it has this little, what looks like a part of a map, and then these 5 characters. If you flip it back over, you'll see that same thing right there. There's the map, there's the 5 characters right there. Okay. So now, and there's kind of, it's kind of fun looking at this, because there is a little bit of a message right here. You'll see that if these guys, I'm assuming, represent the 5 guys in the band, and then you'll see that they've taken what looks like a piece of the United States, because there's the Great Lakes, you know, there's Florida, Texas, etc. So this is the West, that's the East. And then you'll see there's a little circle right there, which I'm assuming is supposed to then be part of that little circle. And this is where they're from. The guys from STYX are from Chicago. And so they're showing you on this map that this is, I'm assuming that was the point here, that they're from Chicago. Now, if you flip this over, on the other side, you have this kind of interesting thing where now you have these same 5 characters that then go into what looks like a record, which goes into an ear, and then you have STYX. And then over here, you have the initials of the guys in the band. And then on this side, what I'm assuming that they were doing with this was creating something that was similar to the golden record they put on the Voyager spacecraft that we shot off into space in 1977. And there was that gold record. One of the things that you'll see on there is a similar thing like that, and an image like this. And I think that was the whole point here, is that they were trying to create something that would look like that record did. And then, of course, when you look here, you'll see all the different lyrics to the songs, other information down here and what have you. So anyway, that's the inside. So that's what an American pressing of this album looks like. Now, what I'm going to show you is what a Japanese import looks like, because it's a little bit different. I picked this one up on one of my recent trips to Thailand, and you'll see that I bought it for 400 baht, which translates out to about 12 bucks. And so I'll take that off so you can see this. This right here is called an obi strip. And basically what it is it's when albums are sold over in Asia like this, they'll put this on there that kind of tells what the information, especially because a lot of the stuff in here, like, and this isn't connected, but right underneath it, it says STYX Cornerstone. And so what they do here is they just write it, they put these strips on here that have all the information on the album just in Japanese. So this says STYX Cornerstone right here. This is something along the lines of the album you've been waiting for since Pieces of Eight, and it tells a little bit about the record. And then here's a track list. And like I said, this thing will actually come off. It slides on and off. But you'll see the cover's pretty much the same. But you'll also notice that it doesn't open up the same way. It just actually flips over just like a quote, normal record would. So it doesn't open up the same way. You remember this one opened up like so, and then it had the silver thing in the middle, and then I'll show you how this one works. This one just opens up like a double record, like that. And instead of having the record inside here, this is just kind of an insert. So the rest of this is very similar. All this is kind of the same as the other thing. But this is a little different in that this one opens up all the way, like so. Has the two images, though, that I showed you just a second ago. And then when you flip it over, in this case, it has all of the information related to the record written in Japanese. And then, of course, here's the band members and what have you. So when you buy, I have several albums like this. When you get these imports, a lot of times they will come with an insert like this that has all the information written in that particular language. And so anyway, that's what that looks like. So then the record in this case would be just like a normal double record that would just sit inside a plastic sleeve like so. Actually, these are kind of neat too, because these plastic sleeves that you get in a lot of these Japanese imports have instead of just being square, like you probably remember a lot of our records had, these things have kind of that rounded look there. It's kind of neat. Anyway, thought you might find that interesting. There's 1979. And yeah, so I thought you might find that kind of interesting to see what that looks like on the inside, an import compared to an American version of it. So kind of cool stuff. So anyway, so what I have here for you to go along with it, because this record was a little different, there's a little review here about the record that I'm going to read to you, and then I'm going to read a concert review that was written like right after this record came out. And this record actually had some pretty decent songs on it. The ones that the standouts, I didn't care for the song Babe. I know that became huge, but Babe, I love you. I mean, everybody's heard that song. Babe, I'm leaving, blah, 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 blah. It never really did anything for me, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it was a huge, huge hit. Lights, this is the one that this was one of my favorite songs on the album. And it starts out a little, I don't know how you put it, Styxy, has kind of their synth sound and the kind of classic Dennis DeYoung sound. But then it goes into this really, really nice acoustic guitar. And I heard the knock on my door. I heard the ring of the bell. And Tommy Shaw, his voice is so great. Dennis DeYoung used to be my favorite singer in this band when I was a young person. The older I got, and the more I listened to them, the more I started loving Tommy Shaw's voice. It's so fantastic. And it complemented Dennis DeYoung so well. And that's one of the things about this album, and STYX in general. But this album, really, there's so much harmony. And you can really, really, when you put those guys' voices together and you throw James Young in there, because you had three really excellent vocalists in this band. And each one of them took lead on different songs. James you wouldn't hear as much, but But Tommy and Dennis, boy, you get their voices together, throw James in there, and man, it is just this amazing harmony. Anyway, and you get a lot of that on here. Lights is a great, might be my favorite song on this album. The song Why Me, I didn't love, but there is something really cool about this song. It has a sax solo, and I don't love the sax, but I love what they did with it in this song. Because it goes into this sax solo, and then there's a call and response solo between the saxophone and James Young. So you have this electric guitar and saxophone, and then they start playing on top of each other, and it's actually pretty cool. It's worth listening to the song just to hear what they did with that. Of course, there's Babe, Never Say Never. Boat on the River was a really, really cool tune. It's kind of a folk song. And Tommy Shaw plays a mandolin in it, and Dennis Young plays an accordion. And it's really kind of a cool little song. So that one's pretty cool. Let's see what else on here. Over here we have Borrowed Time. Borrowed Time, if my favorite song is not Lights, it would probably be Borrowed Time. And it's another one that has this it has this song, it has a guitar solo in there that sounds a lot like Queen. And it goes la 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 la. It's a pretty cool tune. First Time is another ballad. Eddie over here is a song that was that's a James Young song. He sings that one, and then I can't remember much about Love in the Midnight. But there was some good stuff on here. It was a pretty good album, and like I said, it sold extremely well. The next album after this one would be a giant hit, and that was Paradise Theater. And then of course you'd go into Kilroy, and then after that the band kind of broke up. But this was, when you throw Babe on there was something there that caused this little bit of a rift, and you could kind of feel it at this point. The artistic differences were really setting in. So I'm going to read this to you, and I think you'll find this interesting. So this review, it's very simple, very short, but it's the title of the review says, "STYX picks softer sound. Fuller instrumentation puts Cornerstone in a new genre. The hugely successful Chicago Quintet should draw even more fans to the fold with this, their 9th album project. Cornerstone was shipped platinum, but nowhere are they more popular than in Canada, where they first really broke with the Montreal market. Now, in the midst of a Canadian tour, which has them in Toronto last night and tonight, Cornerstone should be selling even bigger in the days to come. For STYX, Cornerstone is a departure of sorts, or more a progression. The album features a smoother, softer overall feel, assisted considerably by the addition of horns and strings, instruments STYX has not used before. A sax solo on Why Me gives STYX a new edge, and the song Boat on the River is given a gypsy-like folk treatment. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Gypsy, it is. It does have that gypsy-like kind of feel to it. It's like I said a minute ago, it's a really, really cool song. But one of the highlights is the plaintive Babe by Dennis Young, STYX's first ever ballad. Cornerstone finally affirms the powerful musical talent of STYX while tempting audiences to follow them into the 80s for new and exciting musical adventures. Okay, so now we're going to check this out. It says Love Fest ignores late start, and this is a concert review that they did at the same time. And this is, when you look at the date's October 19th, 1979. So literally this album had been out for days, maybe a couple of weeks. So here we go. STYX fans' high decibel approval rattles Garden's rafters. "We love coming back to Toronto," screamed guitarist James Young to the Maple Leaf Gardens crowd last night. "It reminds us of our hometown Chicago, 20 years ago when it was still clean and beautiful." The Chicago-based rock band STYX's love for Toronto is not entirely spontaneous. Toronto and Canada liked, listened to, and bought the records of STYX long before their own country had discovered them. Now STYX is one of the biggest rock bands in the world, and its members haven't forgotten Canada's early support. The 5 members of STYX were in Toronto last night for their first of 2 performances at the Gardens. The second goes tonight. And I just blew right past something really important there, but we forget just how big STYX was. They were huge. They were so famous. It was because today we kind of lose track of just how big some of these bands were back in the 70s, but these guys at this point were enormous, and they would just get bigger after this. When Paradise Theater came out, they just kept getting big. Anyway, they were really something back then. Okay. And while the place was not sold out, there aren't many bands around that can come close to filling such a cavernous venue for 2 nights in a row. As a rule, rock audiences are treated abominably when it comes to waiting for the show to begin, and STYX was no exception in that respect. With a scheduled starting time of 7:30 p.m., it was after 9 before the group finally appeared on stage. Anybody out there have experiences like that before, where you go to a concert and you just wait and wait for who knows why? Anyway, let's see here. Street Heart was offered as an opening appeasement, but not many in the crowd seemed to go for it. Nevertheless, when the curtains finally rose to expose STYX in all their technical glory, the crowd rose to its feet and shouted its welcome for minutes. With a new album just out, Cornerstone, STYX had plenty of new material to draw from last night, and the reaction to the new songs was almost as deafening as the response to the slew of past hits they performed. Opening the show with Borrowed Time from the new album, which we just talked about a second ago, like I said, which is should go get that song out. There's one kind of silly thing in the middle where they go, yes, no, with these really high voices and low voices. But it's STYX. They did have some really quirky things that they would do in some of their music. And you just, if you understand them and like them, you just kind of go with some of the quirky stuff that they'd put in these songs. Okay, so let's see here. STYX moved on to such favorites as Great White Hope, The Grand Illusion, Fooling Yourself, Lady, Crystal Ball, Sweet Madam Blue, and Come Sail Away. I mean, these are great songs. They had so many great tunes that, you know, by the time they got here to this album, they had this great library, so they could just go play a concert and every song was going to be good at that point. So anyway, I mean, because look at those. Those are such great tunes. Okay. Of the new material, STYX's first full-fledged ballad, Babe, got an overwhelming response with vocalist keyboardist. Now STYX fans are going to notice a huge mistake right here. Vocalist keyboardist James DeYoung delivering the splendid vocal work. Obviously not James DeYoung. There's James Young, who's the lead guitarist, and Dennis DeYoung, the keyboardist, and that's who they're obviously talking about here. Impish guitarist Tommy Shaw belted out the album opener, Lights, and Young sang Eddie, a song dedicated to Jimmy Carter and presumably about Edward Kennedy, with its lyrics, Eddie, don't you run, you know what they've done to your brothers. The members of STYX are pretty well matched in their instrumental abilities, and each is given an equal share of the limelight. While DeYoung does the majority of the vocal work and has some shining moments on grand piano, Shaw and Young also do some lead vocals. Drummer John Panazzo also had a chance to show off his impressive talent in an extremely long but exciting drum solo. I, to this day, even though I have most of their albums and multiple copies, I think this album, I probably have 4 copies of it. I don't know why, I just do. I still have never seen them in concert. So if anybody knows about this, the long drum solo and what made it so exciting, put it down in the notes. Actually really curious about that, what they're saying. About the only member who stays largely out of the spotlight is bassist Chuck Panazzo. The sound for STYX last night was not great, although it improved as the show wore on. Lighting and technical effects, however, were excellent, with unique use of spotlights and a myriad of small flashing lights that resembled camera flashes. STYX also employed a screen on stage running films of clouds and bubbles during Come Sail Away, and there was the odd explosion thrown in. And Come Sail Away, I mean, come on. That song is so amazing. That is just one of the most classic tunes ever. And it just, anyway, I love that song so much. There was one encore for the enthusiastic, predominantly young crowd last night, Miss America, That's the name of the song. Was given a good workout before the band disappeared to rest up for tonight's performance. And that's the end of the article. Anyway, I find these things kind of interesting looking back to what people had to say about them at the time, because this album was a little bit new. And if you followed STYX, you could sense that it was a little bit different. They were they were kind of shifting a little bit, changing direction just a little bit. And like I said, it's actually a pretty good album overall. And then they would go on and have another really successful album after this, Paradise Theater. And I think I've talked about this on this show. And I tell you, their album covers were so cool. And that one similarly was another, Paradise Theater was such a cool album cover. And the album itself, if you've ever looked at it, there's some pretty neat stuff. And I think I've got that covered in another video somewhere. But they had some really good stuff. And Paradise Theater, they were shifting the vision of the band, not just going into this ballad stuff like they did here, but they started shifting into this concept album idea, which Paradise Theater is. And then, of course, Kilroy was here after that, was full on, like practically rock opera storyline at that point. And when I say that, literally, when they went on tour with that, they literally performed part of it as a stage production at the beginning of the concert. And so that they really, really did shift the direction. And then that kind of led to the dissolution of the band. It fell apart at that point. But I always really liked their stuff. And I liked it enough that I've bought it over the years, and I've listened to a lot of this. I really enjoy a lot of their music. And so anyway, I thought you'd enjoy that, kind of seeing what these different versions of the album look like, what an import looks like as compared to the stuff that they released here in the United States. And please, if you're not following the channel, please follow the channel. If you, please like the video and leave your comments down below. If you had this album, what did you think of it? And did you ever see this import? What did that look like to you? Did you have something like this, or did you have the original? And had you ever seen this record, the unique way that it opened up? And also, from a track standpoint, if you were a STYX fan, what did you think of that shift? Could you feel it at the time? Could you feel that they were starting to go in a different direction? Because when this stuff came out, 1979, when this thing came out, I was what? I think I was barely 10 years old at this point when this came out. So I was listening to Kiss. I was still in that phase, just about to kind of graduate into other stuff. So I really wasn't paying attention to these guys, other than you'd see their things popping up. Like I said, I think I said in another video, I saw a TV commercial for the Pieces of 8 album cover. So I remember that, but it wasn't until years later that I would start getting into them and listening to their stuff more. So I'd love to get your feedback on that. If you experienced it at the time, and what was that like as a fan watching them go through that shift, watching those changes happen. So I'd love to get your feedback on that. And also, if you're a STYX fan, you probably know other STYX fans, because STYX fans are like that. So please share this video with them, because they'd probably enjoy seeing the different versions of the album, if nothing else. And so anyway, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.